Now, the Desert Fathers were masters of prayer. I saw a marquee just last week. It said, prayer is easy. It's like talking to a good friend. And there is an element of prayer that is like that. But the fathers say that prayer is the hardest thing for men to really do. Because the powers of darkness, the principalities, the dark forces, that was their number one work, is to keep our minds from God. And so you try to sit in church, and I guarantee you your mind's going to wander, unless you've already become a saint. You're going to be thinking about what's for dinner, and with the pretty dress that this person has on, and the ugly hat that that person's wearing. You're going to be thinking about all these things because that's just what the enemy is going to be telling you. And it's rare, very rare, for somebody to be in church with their heart, soul, mind, and strength focused upon God. But the Desert Fathers made prayer their first endeavor. Prayer was the most important thing in the world to them because it was their connection to God. And they developed levels of prayer that we can't imagine. They have what you call pure prayer. Pure prayer was when a person was praying and he was not aware of his body or the world or anything, but only immersed in God and nothing else. And coming down from pure prayer was almost like being put in a cage. The states that they experience are amazing because they gave all of their heart, soul, mind, and strength to it. And for us, we have to begin. We've got to learn to pray with attention. We've got to learn to focus our minds. You know, I've had people say, prayer doesn't work. I prayed that my grandmother wouldn't die, and she died. God wasn't listening. It's like the little girl whose mother told her how beautifully her father played the piano, and she'd go to it and bang on it. She said, this thing isn't beautiful. She says, it's ugly. And she tried to come up with something beautiful, and it's awful. And she thought, my mother's lying. This doesn't produce beautiful music. And one day her father came back from Iraq, where he had been stationed, and he woke her up in the night and embraced her, and the next day she woke up to this most beautiful music. And she came down and said, that's beautiful. How did you do that? He says, well, I practiced for many years, my dear. I practiced for many years to learn how to play this way. Well, this is how people approach prayer the way she approached that piano. They feel when their bangings at prayer don't work, that God isn't listening. And prayer is an art. And we'll see Moses developing the art of prayer. But it was a struggle, because every time he tried to pray, he had dark thoughts come up. He remembered the wine, he remembered the bawdy songs, he remembered that delicious meat that he had, of the sheep. All these things came to his mind, and he was frustrated. Because all of his effort, he kept having lustful thoughts and imaginings. Everything would go on in his mind but prayer. Well, he went to his elder and he says, I'm failing. I just can't think of anything but the world. I can't think of anything but all the things that I lust after. And the elder says, you just have to persevere. And so Moses strengthened his prayer. He stayed up all night long. He wouldn't let his knees bend. He prayed for hours. He ate, he fasted. He ate only 10 ounces of bread a day. And bit by bit, he began to find his prayer deepening. Even though the battle wasn't won, even though the demons still tormenting, he found a deepening. And so he'd go into his cell, his chapel, and every day he'd go armed for warfare. Now, speaking of the cell, at one point years later, somebody asked Moses for direction. And he said, "Get you into your cell, and it will teach you all." Now, the cell has many meanings. It's, of course, his home. It's his battleground. It's his chapel. But this is also the cell. This body of ours is our cell. And our cell is where we commune with God in our heart. In the depths of our heart, this is our cell. But our home should be our shelter, our chapel. You know, there's a beautiful sentence at the end of, I think it's 1 Corinthians, where St. Paul says, "And Aquila and Priscilla salute you much in the Lord with the church that is in their house." Isn't that beautiful? But if you're a Christian and you want to follow the first commandment, which is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and obey the commandment to strive for ceaseless prayer, then your home must become a chapel. Now, I'm not suggesting that you set up an altar and everything, but it should be a holy place, not a place of entertainment and amusement. It should be a place where God is first and where prayer takes place daily and multiple times daily. Your house should be holy, sanctified by the blessing of God upon it and your prayerful activity in it. Now, many of these things I'm saying today are new to many Christians because Christianity has been so watered down and diluted that it bears very little resemblance to the early church and the early Christians. And I'm not just talking about these desert fathers. And so it's strange to us. When I first heard this stuff, I said, that sounds pretty far-fetched to me. But Scripture is Scripture, and nothing that's happening here wasn't already commanded by God. I've heard people say, "I love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength." I said, "Boy, you must be a saint. That's the first commandment, but I have never met anyone that fulfilled it. Certainly not me. We can try. But we're lucky if we give God a half an hour a day of our thought. We're thinking about work, and at work, of course, we're consumed with that. When we get home, we want food, we want to eat, and then we want to watch TV or do some more. And so maybe before we go to bed, we say, "Now I lay me down to sleep," and we give him 10 minutes maybe. But prayer is the most important thing we can do.